were conducted against the facility. And even in that situation, there was some individuals there with the same last names and some of the similarities.
But if it were a mistake, Madam Secretary,
we believe everything was done appropriately, and we'll continue to make sure that it is done and handled appropriately.
All right. Well, appreciate you looking into it. Not my constituents, but you had mentioned in your testimony, and you've said previously, that the focus of your agency is to go after the worst of.
A powerful exchange on Capitol Hill is drawing renewed attention to how immigration enforcement intersects with civil rights, union protections, and due process, especially when U.S. citizens are caught in the middle. Congresswoman Veronica Escobar of Texas sharply questioned Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem over a recent ICE raid on the home of an American family and what Escobar described as a growing pattern of overreach inside the Department of Homeland Security.
Madam Secretary, I have a question related to something more close to home for me in the community in El Paso with DHS employees. For decades, CBP employees who work at our land ports of entry have been contractually allowed by CBP to have an off-site location for their union. And this off-site location is completely funded by union dues, not by taxpayer money. And again, this was something agreed to in their contract. I was shocked and alarmed to learn that they were told by DHS they could no longer be off-site, and they were forced to come into a DHS facility in El Paso. It's a conference room, media training room. So that part of their contract, that longstanding agreement, was violated in my eyes. Are you aware of this at all?
I have heard about it, but I don't know the details of that agreement, so I can follow up with you and get that back to you. And if you would lay out the concerns for being co-located, I think that would be fantastic for me to know.
We will. We'll make sure to communicate with your team. Would love to work with you on this. The same has not been true for the Border Patrol Union. So there's disparate treatment, and additionally, just to very quickly lay out why it's important for union members to be able to speak to their union leaders in private, and being located in a small conference room, media training room, offers no privacy. There are other issues, but I look forward to working with you on that.
I do know that, the difference in the two unions is important, and I'll look into how those were interpreted. And I also know that the one union is located under the Treasury Union as well, and that defines some requirements and for how it's regulated and set out going forward. So I'll see if that is the determining factor on why there was a difference in how the locations were determined.
And I would ask, Madam Secretary, that you please allow the El Paso Union to continue to be housed off-site. It is their preference, doesn't impact the budget or appropriations. They pay for it. So I don't see a reason why this long-standing, decades-long situation should be changed. So would ask for your support for that, please.
I'll look into it.
Okay, perfect. I also wanted to ask you about this NBC News story, and I'll enter into the record this article as well. U.S. citizen family traumatized after ICE raided their Oklahoma home in search of someone else. And according to the local affiliate, KFOR, which was reporting on this story, immigration agents raided the home last week. They had a search warrant for the home, but the suspects listed on the warrant were no longer living in the home. The family was forced to wait outside in the rain during the search. Mother and her girls, all U.S. citizens, their money was taken, their laptop, their cell phone. I asked you at the top of our first round if you believed it was important for DHS, and if you would attest to the fact that DHS needs to rectify any mistakes. If this were a mistake, will you ensure that this family, this U.S. citizen family, gets its property back in a timely manner?
Well, in that particular situation, the warrant for that situation was on the house and the facility, not on the individuals that were there. And so that house was being used for human smuggling. And so those
a
operations
prior,
were conducted against the facility. And even in that situation, there was some individuals there with the same last names and some of the similarities.
But
And
if
so
it were a
we're-
mistake,
we are
Madam
continuing-
Secretary,
we
if it
believe
were a
everything was
mistake.
done appropriately, and we'll continue to make sure that it is done and handled appropriately.
All right. Well, appreciate you looking into it. That not my constituents, but you had mentioned in your testimony, and you've said previously, that the focus of your agency is to go after the worst of the worst, people who are here illegally. But we have seen reporting and spoken to individuals, we meaning Congress, that in fact, there have been abuses on that front. People with legal protections have been deported. I laid out in the first round, U.S. citizen children. I don't know, and I asked, and you said you'd get back to me about whether parents actually filled out the ICE forms that are normally used for those processes. U.S. citizen families with nothing to do with human trafficking, and now DHS employees as well, in my view, have been subjected to an abuse of power. And we all swore an oath to the Constitution. This is a democratic republic. Rule of law is important. Due process is important. And ultimately, that will be my North Star, not just in this hearing, but throughout everything that I work on as a member of Congress. I thank you, Madam Secretary, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Before we unpack what happened and why it matters, make sure to subscribe so you do not miss reporting that adds clarity, context, and accountability to the headlines. Escobar began by raising an issue close to home in El Paso, involving DHS employees themselves. For decades, Customs and Border Protection employees working at land ports of entry had been contractually allowed to operate their union out of an off-site location. That space was paid for entirely through union dues, not taxpayer dollars, and was explicitly permitted under their labor agreement. Escobar told the committee she was shocked to learn that DHS had suddenly ordered the union out of its off-site location and forced it into a conference room inside a DHS facility. She said this appeared to violate a long-standing contractual agreement and raised serious concerns about privacy, especially for union members seeking confidential conversations with their representatives. Secretary Noem acknowledged she had heard about the issue, but said she was not familiar with the details of the agreement. She pledged to follow up and work with Escobar's office, noting that differences between unions, including how they are regulated, might explain the disparate treatment. Escobar pressed the point, asking Noem to support allowing the El Paso union to remain off-site. She emphasized that the arrangement costs taxpayers nothing and has functioned for decades without issue. The concern, Escobar made clear, was not just logistical, but about workers' rights and the ability of federal employees to speak freely without fear of surveillance. Subscribe here because this part of the hearing reveals how internal DHS decisions can quietly affect constitutional freedoms like association and speech. The exchange then turned to a far more alarming case that has drawn national attention. Escobar entered into the record an NBC News report detailing an ICE raid on a home in Oklahoma belonging to a U.S. citizen family. According to local reporting, agents executed a search warrant looking for individuals who no longer lived there. During the raid, the family, including a mother and her daughters, all U.S. citizens, were forced to stand outside in the rain. Their money, laptop, and cell phone were taken. Escobar asked Noem directly whether DHS would ensure the family's property was returned promptly if the raid was a mistake. The question cut to the heart of accountability, not whether a warrant existed, but whether DHS would correct harm done to innocent people. Noem responded that the warrant was issued for the house itself, not specific individuals, and claimed the property had been used for human smuggling. She said DHS believed everything was handled appropriately and did not acknowledge wrongdoing, even while leaving open the possibility of further review. That response highlighted a critical legal distinction that many viewers may not be familiar with. Warrants tied to locations rather than individuals can still expose innocent residents to invasive enforcement actions. Civil liberties advocates argue this is precisely why agencies must exercise restraint and swiftly remedy harm when U.S. citizens are affected. Escobar broadened the issue, pointing to reports that individuals with legal protections have been deported and that even U.S. citizen children have been swept into immigration enforcement actions. She reminded the committee that she had previously asked whether proper ICE forms were completed in cases involving U.S. citizen children, and that she was still awaiting answers. Escobar closed with a forceful reminder of the oath taken by every member of government. She emphasized that the United States is a democratic republic built on the rule of law and due process, principles that must apply even when enforcement agencies are pursuing legitimate goals. Her message was clear. Immigration enforcement does not override constitutional rights, and DHS must be held accountable when its actions harm citizens or employees. This hearing was not just about one raid or one union office. It was about whether power is exercised with restraint, transparency, and respect for the Constitution. As these debates continue, the consequences will be felt not just in courtrooms or committee rooms, but in living rooms across the country. Subscribe for continued coverage because these are the moments where policy meets real lives.